The harsh glare of the overhead floodlights turned every speck of dust into a tiny, swirling universe around Elena's boots. The hangar echoed with angry voices and the acrid stench of hydraulic fluid. The rescue team, 12 hardened faces splattered with oil and grime, stood in a semicircle watching her as if she were something diseased. Captain Brandt's shadow fell across the concrete floor, sharp and dark. He pointed at Elena, voice raised, each word a slap. "You left him behind, Martinez. You froze up and left Davis to fend for himself." He turned, searching the faces for support. She watched the hatch close and just stood there. A low, disgusted murmur rippled through the team. Elena's heartbeat hammered against her ribs, loud enough to drown out everything but the captain's voice. She could still hear Davis's shouts, muffled, desperate, as the blast doors slammed shut. She had reached for him, but her hand hadn't moved, her body locked by invisible chains. "One moment. Just one. You want to say something, Martinez?" Captain Brandt's glare bored into her. He was taller by a head, broad and commanding, his uniform pristine even after the chaos of the evacuation. Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her tongue felt thick, her throat sandpaper dry. What could she say? That her muscles had gone numb, that her legs had turned to concrete? She had trained for this. She was supposed to act, supposed to save her teammates. But the moment had swallowed her whole. Brandt turned away from her with a sharp shake of his head, eyes fixed on the rest of the squad. "You all saw it. When the alarms went off, when the fire hit the control room, every single one of you moved except her." His finger jabbed the air. She watched as Davis got pinned, then waited for someone else to do something. A heavy-set woman with a scarred cheek, Sergeant Lynn, crossed her arms. "She's never been right since the last op, sir. Just slows us down." Someone else, Cooper, the squad joker, laughed bitterly. "She's a tourist, not a rescuer. Doesn't belong here." Elena tried to swallow the shame. Her eyes burned, but she refused to blink. If she did, she might cry, and she would not give them that satisfaction. Not here, under the lights, with all of them watching. Captain Brandt's voice softened, not with sympathy but with cold finality. "From this point forward, Martinez, you're not to take point. You're not to open any hatches, override any controls, or touch any gear without orders from me or Lynn. You're backup. Understood?" Each word landed like a blow. She nodded stiffly. "Yes, sir." Brandt stepped closer, his boots scuffing on the concrete. "I'm going to be very clear, Martinez. If you endanger my people again, I'll pull you from this team myself. You want to freeze up and get yourself killed, that's your business. But nobody here's dying because you hesitated." He didn't wait for an answer. He walked away, barking orders for the next sweep, leaving Elena marooned in the silence that followed. The others dispersed, but not before shooting her glances, some pitying, most hostile. The echo of Davis's scream still rang in her ears, overlapping with the sting of the captain's words. She moved to the edge of the hangar, hiding her shaking hands behind her back, jaw clenched so tightly her teeth ached. Her gear hung heavy on her shoulders, straps biting through her jacket, weighing her down. The door to the debriefing room clanged open, and the team shuffled past her, not looking at her, not speaking. Lynn paused just long enough to look Elena up and down, eyes full of contempt. "If you're going to break, do it somewhere we can't see you," she hissed before vanishing into the bright hallway. Elena's breath caught. She stared at the oily puddle beneath her boots, willing herself to move, to say something, to defend herself. But the words wouldn't come. She felt invisible and at the same time exposed, like her every failure was a flare lighting up the darkness. She could hear their voices from inside the debriefing room, voices muffled by steel and distance but still sharp enough to make out the tone. Her name spat out like a curse. Coward. Weak link. Should never have been cleared for field work. The captain's voice, low and gravelly, "If it comes down to it again, she doesn't get a vote." Her palms stung from where her fingernails dug into them. She wanted to scream, to punch the metal lockers, to do anything that might make the ache inside her chest fade even a little. Instead, she stood alone in the shadows, staring at her reflection in the gleaming aluminum wall, a small, trembling figure wrapped in the armor of someone she barely recognized. For a second she imagined walking away. Just dropping her helmet, peeling off the sweat-stained vest and vanishing into the night. Let them handle it. Let them see what it's like to be powerless. But something in her, a stubborn flicker, refused. If they wanted her gone, they'd have to drag her out. She'd earned her place here, she had survived, she had trained, she had bled for this team. One mistake, one moment, and suddenly she was nothing? Her fists unclenched. She straightened her back, biting down on the shame and fury like a mouthful of steel. The door to the hangar swung open again. The rookie, Jax, barely 19 and still hopeful, hesitated at the threshold. He looked at Elena with wide, uncertain eyes. "Sorry, Elena," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you really scared everyone today." She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "I know." Jax nodded, then hurried after the others. Alone again, Elena exhaled shakily. She was the last to leave the hangar. As the lights dimmed behind her, she stepped out into the biting wind, head held high, her heart pounding, not just with shame but with a slow, simmering defiance. If they were going to call her a coward, she would make damn sure they remembered it, one way or another. The barracks at midnight were a tomb. Elena lay on her narrow cot, boots on the floor, gear piled beside her, listening to the low hum of voices behind the thin curtain that separated her from the rest of the team. Laughter drifted through, rough, forced, and pointedly excluding. Every now and then a word like freeze or choke would spike through the haze, followed by snickers and the muffled clang of a beer bottle against metal. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Davis's hand reaching for hers, his face twisted with fear. Her body in that moment had been an anchor. Useless. Worse than useless, a liability. She curled up, clutching her jacket tight against her chest, squeezing her eyes shut until her skull throbbed. The ache inside her would not let go. At dawn, the team gathered for the briefing. Elena kept to the edge of the room, unnoticed. She watched as Captain Brandt plotted their new extraction route on a cracked digital map, the lines zigzagging through enemy territory. "The tunnels are flooded," he barked, "and our window just shrank. We move at dusk. Fast, tight, no mistakes." As the others nodded grimly, Brandt's gaze flicked to Elena for a moment, just long enough for her stomach to tighten. "Martinez, you'll stay with the rear guard. No heroics. Lynn Cooper, you're on point." Lynn shot her a triumphant smirk. Cooper rolled his eyes, lips twitching in a private joke. Elena said nothing, though her face burned. They spent the afternoon in preparation. Elena's gear felt heavier than ever as she checked and rechecked it in silence. Lynn passed, bumping her shoulder on purpose. "If you're planning to freeze up again, give us a heads up this time," she muttered, not bothering to lower her voice. Elena's hands trembled. She fumbled the strap on her helmet. The rookie, Jax, gave her a sympathetic glance but said nothing. She was radioactive now, a pariah. They moved out at dusk, darkness thick as oil. The city's ruins rose around them, windows shattered, smoke drifting through the skeletons of old buildings. Every footstep sounded like an accusation. Elena kept to the back, her heart pounding at every shadow, the echoes of her team's doubts swirling with the noises of the night. An hour in, a sudden crash of metal rang out, a falling pipe, nerves on edge. Lynn spun around, snapping, "Quiet. Martinez, stay back." The others barely glanced at Elena as they reformed and pressed forward, deeper into the maze. But as the path narrowed and their nerves frayed, mistakes began to mount. Cooper tripped in alarm, silent, but a pulsing red light blinked above them, counting down. Panic set in. Brandt barked orders, Lynn cursed, Jax's hands shook so badly he almost dropped his weapon. "Martinez, cover the rear." Brandt snapped. "That's all you have to do." She nodded, biting back a retort. Her mind was screaming to move, to act, to prove she belonged, but the rules were clear. Stay behind, don't interfere, don't trust yourself. As they huddled in the darkness, Elena caught snippets of conversation. "She'll freeze again if anything goes down," Cooper whispered. "She's not cut out for this," Lynn replied. "Don't let her drag you down." Elena pressed her back against the crumbling wall, fists clenched so tight her knuckles whitened. Their words seared into her, confirming every self-doubt. Maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong. Suddenly, static crackled in her earpiece, an encrypted signal, faint but urgent. "Unknown movement for a clock," a distant voice warned. The team tensed, weapons raised. Brandt signaled for silence, eyes darting between faces. Elena spotted movement out of the corner of her eye, shadows flickering near the wreckage behind them, barely a whisper of motion. Her pulse spiked. She opened her mouth to warn them, but Lynn shot her a glare that killed the words in her throat. "Quiet, Martinez. Don't panic everyone again." She bit her tongue, rage and shame flooding her veins. She wanted to scream, to force them to listen. Instead, she kept watch, every muscle taut, sweat trickling down her back. As the hours dragged on, the group's tension became a living thing. The threat of attack, the weight of the failed rescue, the exhaustion. It pressed on them, turning every word sharp, every look an accusation. During a brief halt, Jax finally broke the silence between them. He crouched beside Elena, whispering, "I don't think you're a coward." His voice shook, but his eyes were sincere. She wanted to believe him. But her voice came out flat, brittle. "Doesn't matter what you think. Doesn't matter what I think either." He tried to smile. "We all get scared. They just need someone to blame." She turned away, blinking back tears. "Go catch up. Don't want them thinking you're weak too." Jax hesitated, then slipped away. Night deepened. The wind howled through the ruins. Elena stood watch, alone, a wallflower amid warriors. She was afraid of freezing again, afraid of letting them down, afraid of herself. Yet beneath the fear, a stubborn ember glowed. She would not run. Not this time. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a storm coming or something worse. Elena shivered, watching the horizon, knowing that before dawn, everything could change. Lightning split the sky as the team crouched in the gutted remains of an office tower. Rain hammered the exposed beams, dripping in cold rivulets down Elena's neck. The team huddled under a makeshift tarp, faces drawn and tired, eyes haunted by exhaustion and something deeper, fear. Captain Brandt ran a hand through his damp hair and peered through a cracked window at the empty street below. "This is as far as we go tonight. We'll move at first light. No fires, no lights, no noise." Lynn grumbled, "We're sitting ducks in here. Better than running blind." Brandt turned his back on them and scanned his battered tablet, blue light flickering against his hard features. "Keep watch in shifts. Cooper, you're first. Martinez, you're last." Elena didn't protest. She set her jaw and quietly checked her rifle, her eyes darting to the rain-streaked glass. Every shadow outside seemed to move. Each drip and creak of the ruined building sounded like a warning. As the others lay down, Elena remained awake, legs tucked to her chest, head on her knees. Sleep was impossible. Their trust was gone, every breath a reminder that she was an outsider, an afterthought, a risk. Hours passed. Thunder rolled across the city, and the wind moaned between the skeletal buildings. Elena found herself replaying the failed rescue, Davis's terrified eyes, her own body refusing to obey, the crushing judgment in Brandt's voice. The shame gnawed at her. Suddenly she heard it, a faint, rhythmic scraping too regular for the storm. She froze, listening. There it was again, closer now, boots on concrete, muffled by the wind. Elena crept to the window, heart in her throat. Down below, barely visible, shadows moved in the rain. Figures shifting purposefully between burned-out cars. Armed. Not their people. She hissed, movement outside, but her voice barely carried over the storm. Cooper, groggy from sleep, blinked at her. "It's probably debris, Martinez." "No, it's..." She squinted, counting, 3, 4, maybe more. Her breath quickened. "There are people out there. Armed. They're moving in formation." Lynn, irritated, rolled over in her sleeping bag. "Here we go again. You see ghosts everywhere." Elena's frustration boiled. "I'm not, damn it, just look." Brandt finally stalked over, voice low and dangerous. "Enough, Martinez," I said. A single shot cracked through the night. Glass exploded behind Cooper's head, shards sparkling like ice. Instantly the team was up, scrambling for cover as gunfire raked the upper floors. Muzzle flashes lit up the street below. The enemy was real, and they had them surrounded. "Positions." Brandt barked, voice echoing in the chaos. Elena dove behind an overturned desk as bullets chewed up the concrete. Her mind raced. They needed an exit, but the only stairwell was already under fire. Lynn shouted, "They're flanking." Rear stairwells blocked. Jax, trembling, tried to reload but dropped his magazine. Cooper swore, clutching a bleeding arm. The team was pinned, scattered, panicked. Brandt crawled to Elena's side, anger burning in his eyes. "You saw them first?" She nodded, shaking. "I tried to warn." "Forget it. We need another way out." "Ideas?" Elena swallowed hard, her brain burning through maps and layouts. "There's a service duct on the lower level. If we can reach it, it runs beneath the street." Cooper barked a humorless laugh. "You sure, Martinez? Or are you just seeing things again?" Lynn cut in, "It's better than sitting here and waiting to die." Brandt made a decision. "Lynn, cover us. Martinez, lead the way." Elena's hands shook, but she moved, crawling low as bullets shattered furniture around her. Every muscle screamed with terror, but she forced herself forward. The others followed, reluctantly, trusting her only because the alternative was worse. Down 2 flights the air grew stale and thick. A locked maintenance door blocked their path. Elena fumbled with the rusted handle, pulse pounding, vision tunneling. The memory of the last hatch, her frozen limbs, Davis's screams, threatened to overwhelm her. But the pounding of boots above snapped her back. There was no time to freeze. She slammed her shoulder against the door once, twice, until it groaned open. They tumbled inside just as gunmen reached the stairwell, shouting in a harsh, guttural language. Bullets punched through the thin steel, missing them by inches. The team scrambled down the narrow duct, crawling through darkness, every breath ragged with fear. Behind them, enemy voices echoed, angry, searching, relentless. Lynn hissed, "Keep moving. Don't stop." Jax whimpered, "We're going to get trapped." "No, we're not." Elena's voice was firmer than she felt. "There's a way out. Trust me." The tunnel stank of mold and rot. The passage twisted and narrowed, forcing them to crawl on elbows and knees, scraping flesh raw. Water dripped onto their heads, soaking through their clothes. Elena led, refusing to look back, refusing to listen to the doubts, her own or theirs. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, her hand struck a cold metal grate. She pushed, muscles burning, until it popped free. Dawn light spilled in, pale and blue. One by one, the team crawled out onto a deserted side street, chests heaving, faces streaked with sweat and grime. Brant emerged last, slumping against a wall. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain and distant thunder. Then he looked at Elena, something new, something almost like respect, flickering in his eyes. He nodded once, curt and silent. Elena slumped to the curb, chest heaving, hands trembling. The fear was still there, icy and sharp. But for the first time it was joined by something else, a flicker of pride. She had seen the danger. She had acted. And for a moment her team had followed. But as the rain eased and the dawn brightened the ruined city, Elena knew, the fight wasn't over. The enemy was still out there, and trust could be shattered by a single mistake. She pushed herself to her feet, jaw set. She would not fail them again. The sky was a bruised purple as the team staggered into the derelict subway terminal. The respite outside had been brief. No sooner had they caught their breath than distant gunfire had sent them running again, deeper into the city's decaying arteries. The air underground was damp and electric with panic. Lynn's limp was getting worse. Blood soaked her pant leg where shrapnel had torn through during the escape. Cooper's wounded arm hung useless at his side. Jax's face was ashen, lips pressed tight against the terror he couldn't hide. Captain Brant kept moving, teeth gritted, eyes wild with calculation. Elena followed, adrenaline surging, mind sharp despite exhaustion. She glanced over her shoulder every few steps, watching for movement in the shadowy tunnels. The only thing louder than the distant echo of their pursuers was the pounding of her own heart. They ducked into a maintenance alcove as Brant checked his battered tablet, cursing under his breath. No signal. No map. We're blind down here. Lynn slumped against the tiled wall, chest heaving. We need to rest. I can't, she flinched, biting off the rest of her plea. We stop, we die. Cooper's voice was brittle, his bravado fraying at the edges. Jax looked from one face to the next, desperate. What do we do? We can't fight our way out. We're trapped. The fear in his voice rippled through the group, infecting them all. For a moment, Elena felt the old paralysis tightening around her throat, the same choking, helpless panic she'd felt with Davis, the shame of her inaction, the crushing certainty that she was the weak link. She could see it in their eyes. Even now, with her warning proven right, she was still the one on the outside. But then she looked at Lynn, teeth gritted in pain. Cooper, blood trickling down his sleeve. Jax shaking like a leaf, Brant trying to hold everything together and barely succeeding. They were broken, battered, and hunted, but they were hers. Her team. Her responsibility. She forced herself forward, voice steadier than she felt. There's a service rail deeper in. If we can reach it, it runs under the river to the extraction point. I saw it on the blueprints before the op. Brant's gaze was sharp, suspicious. You're sure? Elena nodded. I remember every detail. If we keep moving, we can beat them to the crossways and lose them in the tunnels. Cooper looked at Brant, eyes wide. You're seriously letting her lead? Brant hesitated, glancing between his battered squad and the black mouth of the tunnel. In that pause, Elena saw it, the moment the captain's pride cracked, replaced by grim necessity. She's our best shot, he muttered. We move on Martinez. The words landed like a challenge. Elena didn't waste time. She took point, rifle up, mind whirring through every turn and junction. The tunnels twisted and narrowed, the walls damp and slimy with age. Water dripped from rusted pipes, echoing into emptiness. Behind her, the others limped and stumbled, nerves strung tight. Minutes stretched, punctuated by distant shouts and the boom of feet above. Twice they heard the enemy, shouts, gunshots, boots hammering the concrete just a level above. Once, a flashlight beam danced down the stairs as they pressed themselves flat against the wall, holding their breath until it swung away. They pressed deeper into the dark, Elena's instincts guiding them. She counted steps, marked each faded sign, ignoring the tremble in her knees and the ache in her lungs. Every time she doubted herself, she forced those memories down, replacing them with the faces of her team, hurt, afraid but moving because of her. Then the worst happened. They reached the junction. The tunnel ahead was flooded, murky water swirling up to Elena's knees. The service door on the far side hung open, the lock twisted off. Voices echoed from behind. The enemy had caught up. Lynn cursed, swaying on her feet. "We can't swim that. I'll drown with this leg." Cooper stared at the water, eyes wild. "We're trapped." Jax whimpered, "They're coming?" The sound of boots thundering down the stairs was deafening. Muzzle flashes lit the tunnel's mouth. Elena moved without thinking. "Go!" she shouted, shoving Lynn forward, taking her weight. "Jax, help Cooper." "Brant, cover." She pushed into the water, Lynn clinging to her shoulder. The cold was a shock, numbing, stealing her breath, but she kept moving, forcing her legs forward, keeping Lynn upright. Gunshots sparked overhead. Chunks of concrete rained into the water. Brant fired back, buying precious seconds. On the far side, Elena dragged Lynn through the door, shoving her to safety. "Stay low," she barked. She turned, grabbing Jax and hauling him up as Cooper stumbled and fell. Bullets ripped through the air, so close she could taste the gunpowder. For an instant, Elena saw Davis's face, helpless, afraid, and then saw herself not frozen, not failing but moving, leading, saving. The past and present collided. She grabbed Cooper by the harness, heaving him through the door just as he collapsed. Brant vaulted in last, slamming the heavy steel door shut. Bullets clanged off the other side, but the lock held. Silence fell, thick and trembling. Lynn sobbed, collapsing against the wall. Jax gasped for air, face wet with tears. Cooper clutched his arm, shaking. Brant, chest heaving, looked at Elena. For the first time his eyes were full of something new, recognition, maybe even awe. Elena slumped to her knees, heart racing, adrenaline burning, every nerve raw. She had done it. She had led them, saved them, not out of luck or accident, but because she refused to let anyone die on her watch again. She looked up at Brant, voice ragged but strong. "We keep moving. We're not home yet." Brant nodded, a slow, solemn smile breaking through his exhaustion. "On your lead, Martinez." The others looked at her, not with doubt or disdain, but with hope, real, desperate hope. Elena drew herself up, every muscle screaming, every breath hard-won. She had carried them through hell and would see them home. They followed her into the darkness, and for the first time, Elena didn't feel the weight of shame. She felt the weight of purpose. The river crossing was a blur, icy water, battered bodies, Elena shouting encouragement as she half-carried Lynn through the knee-deep current. Dawn broke on the far bank, pale gold and gentle after a night of fire and fury. The city's broken skyline shimmered behind them as if the past 12 hours had been a fever dream. They staggered through the mud and reeds, finally collapsing on the safe side, just beyond the range of enemy guns. For a long time no one moved. They lay side by side, breaths coming in shallow gasps, staring up at a sky that seemed impossibly vast and kind. A rescue convoy rumbled over the rise, armored trucks, medics leaping out with stretchers and blankets. In the chaos that followed, Elena faded into the background, letting the medics tend to Lynn and Cooper, watching as Brant barked out orders with the last of his energy. She expected the old pattern to return: exclusion, silent glares, muttered accusations. But something had shifted, something fundamental. As a medic wrapped Lynn's leg, the sergeant reached out and squeezed Elena's hand, her face twisted in pain and gratitude. "Wouldn't have made it without you," she rasped, pride swallowed by the relief of survival. Cooper, usually so quick with a sneer, nodded as the medic splinted his arm. "You got us out," he managed, voice cracking. "Didn't freeze. Didn't run." Jax limped over, eyes shining with exhausted admiration. "You kept saying we'd make it. I almost believed you." Brant approached, battered helmet tucked under one arm. He studied Elena for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, in a voice only she could hear, he said, "You proved me wrong. I was hard on you, I had to be for the team's sake. But today you saved us all." He straightened, turning to the gathered convoy. Martinez was the reason we made it, he announced, loud enough for every medic, driver, and soldier to hear. She let us through. She kept us together. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then the others, her team, echoed his words, not with the empty, automatic cheer of a drill, but with something richer, rawer. Gratitude. Respect. Belief. A wave of emotion crashed over Elena. Relief, pride, and something deeper, older. The bone-deep knowledge that she had earned her place. No, more than earned it, she had claimed it, remade it, not just for herself, but for all the others who had ever been told they weren't enough. The medics bundled them into the trucks, wrapping them in blankets, pressing water bottles into shaking hands. As the city faded behind them, Elena sat by the window watching the sunrise burn away the night's shadows. Lynn dozed beside her, head on Elena's shoulder, murmuring in her sleep. Cooper snored, mouth open, arm in a sling. Jax pressed his nose to the glass, pointing out distant flocks of birds rising over the ruined rooftops. Brant took the seat across from Elena. He cleared his throat, awkward and gruff. About Davis, he's alive. They pulled him from the control room hours after the blast. He's in recovery. Asked about you. Elena closed her eyes, the tight knot of guilt in her chest loosening. Thank you, she whispered. They rode in silence, the road rough beneath the tires, the world outside slowly coming alive. At the checkpoint, a crowd gathered, officials, reporters, families. Elena stepped off the truck last, expecting to vanish into the background as always. Instead, Brant called her name. Martinez. The word rang out like a bell, turning heads. He gestured for her to stand with him as the survivors saluted the crowd, as cameras flashed and voices called their names. She stood, not as the scapegoat or the outcast, but as the one who had seen them home. As the crowd surged forward, a reporter called out, "How did you keep going? Weren't you afraid?" Elena met her gaze, steady and unflinching. Of course I was afraid. We all were. Courage isn't about not being scared, it's about moving forward anyway. I wasn't alone. My team was with me. Her words rippled out, caught by microphones, cameras, and, more importantly, the faces of her team standing behind her now, not ahead. Later, as dusk fell and the crowds faded, Elena lingered at the edge of the camp, watching the sun set behind the battered city. Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. Brant, Lynn, Cooper, and Jax gathered around, wordless but present. No more accusations, no more contempt, only the quiet bond of those who had walked through fire together. Lynn broke the silence. You led us home, Elena? Cooper grinned. Next time you're on point from the start. Jax offered a shy, crooked smile. You're not alone anymore. Brant clapped her on the shoulder, firm and steady. You're the reason we made it. Elena looked out over the city, the scars of the night behind her, the future stretching wide and clear. The shame was gone, replaced by a new weight, the trust and hope of those she had saved. She straightened her back, breathing in the promise of the night, and knew that whatever came next she would face it head-on, not as a coward but as a leader, as the reason they all made it home.